Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to our /Entitled People, where people truly think that they can do no wrong. And in this episode, a psycho Karen thinks that she owns a swimming pool, guys, and she starts attacking people for swimming in her space. It's ridiculous. I hope you enjoy the stories today. Don't shake your heads too hard. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. This happened 2 decades ago. This is a story that my dad recently reminded me about over family dinner. I was 5 years old at the time. So in the morning during weekends, the local pool by my house would host a private swimming club called the Dolphins for young kids aged 4 to 9 to teach them how to swim. The lessons lasted from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And during this time, they wouldn't let anyone in unless they were a part of the Dolphins. My dad used to bring me to the Dolphins every Saturday morning. Usually, after the lesson was over, the kids would be allowed half an hour to play in the water before they went home. Some parents would sit on the benches next to the pool and watch them swim, and others were in the pool with their kids. On this particular day, the lesson was about practicing holding our breath. After the lessons, I decided to practice holding my breath underwater. The exercise I did was to try to sit on the bottom of the pool, at the shallow end, which is around 1 meter deep, and stand up when I needed to take a breath of fresh air. On this particular instance, I was feeling brave, so I sat and tried to hold my breath as long as possible. Suddenly, I hear a splash above my head, and I looked up and there was this giant rubber floaty mat thing above my head. The thing was as big as a queen-size mattress. I was running out of air, so I stood up and my head hit the floaty. I tried to push it upwards, but this thing was ungodly heavy, especially for a 5-year-old. I couldn't stand up, so now I couldn't walk along the bottom of the pool. Now is the point I began to panic. I tried to get out from underneath the floaty, but I couldn't swim yet, so I tried to crawl out, but I barely moved. I then frantically started to flap my arms, thinking I was swimming, but I wasn't moving. My dad, who'd been watching me, noticed my frantic splashing, and he dives into the pool. He then shoves the giant floaty mattress out of the way and pulls me up out of the water. As I surfaced, I hear another splash, and I see an 11-year-old chubby-looking kid fall off the floaty mattress into the water. The mattress was so damn heavy because he was sitting on it. I start to sob uncontrollably from the shock and from inhaling chlorine water. The kid then pulls himself out of the water and ran to the benches, screaming, "Mom, some adult just attacked me." Enter the entitled Karen. The woman marches over and she starts screaming at my dad for pushing her son into the pool, and how dare he lay his hands on him. My dad's pissed, and he starts screaming back at her that her kid plopped his floaty mat thing on top of me, and that I could have drowned. The lifeguard saw the whole thing, and he comes over and says, "Hey, what's the problem?" My dad tells him her kid dropped his float on top of my daughter. She couldn't get out from under it. She almost drowned. The lifeguard then says to the mom, "Did he do it deliberately, or was it by accident?" That's when Karen says, "Of course he did it deliberately. Why would he not? He was playing. Kids play in pools, you know?" Lifeguard then tells her, "Yes, you're allowed to play in pools, but you're not allowed to do anything that could endanger other swimmers. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." At that, Karen says, "But why? Joseph's allowed to do anything he wants. He sits on his mat on top of other people all the time, and he never gets in trouble for it in other pools. So why is it an issue here? Are you discriminating against us?" Lifeguard tells her, "Because it's dangerous, especially to non-swimmers, and no, I'm not discriminating against you." You can see the gears in Karen's mind turns as she processes what's been said to her. She then says if she can't swim, then she has no business being here. Why would anyone bring a kid to a pool if she can't swim? That's stupid. Lifeguard tells her because she's a dolphin in swim class, that's why. Karen looks at him and says, "Are you effing stupid? She's not a dolphin, she's an effing kid." Lifeguard says, No, ma'am. The Dolphins is the name of the swim club. She's taking part in swimming lessons, though your kid must be a part of the Dolphins if he's here." Karen says, "No, my kid's not a part of those crappy Dolphins." Suddenly, the lifeguard's eyes go wide. Plot twist. The kid's not part of the Dolphins. The kid almost drowned me, and he's not even allowed to be here in the first place. Lifeguard then asked, "Then why are you here?" Karen tells him, "I just wanted to take my kids swimming. Is it not obvious? Is that so much to ask without being wrongfully harassed?" The lifeguard then tells her the swimming pool's closed to the public while the dolphin swim classes are on, and she's not even supposed to be here if her son's not enrolled in the class. Karen says to him, "I can come here whenever I want. Why can't you just let my son play in the pool?" He tells her because these are private lessons and for her to go home. That's when Karen starts spouting BS how kids who can't swim should not be allowed in swimming pools, and that we're so selfish for hogging the pool to ourselves, blah blah blah. Her son then shoved me back in the water and I freak out again. And he tried doing that to a few other kids as well. After that, the lifeguard escorts them out while she and her kid were screaming obscenities at everyone. Oh boy, why am I not surprised at all the screaming she did, like real classy Karen. And I hope that was followed by a lifetime ban. And what makes me really angry, guys, is the woman outright said that her kid's done this to other children in pools before, and he's never gotten in trouble. Like, you allow your son to plop himself on top of smaller kids in pools in an attempt to keep them underwater, and you as a parent are okay with that, Karen? I only wish OP's dad threw her into the pool, plopped a mat on her, and given her a taste of what that feels like. And guys, don't even get me started on her comment about OP being a literal dolphin and how kids who can't swim aren't allowed in swimming pools. Clearly, the woman lacks brain cells. So this isn't something that happened to me. It's a story my professor told us that happened to him. I think this is a true story, but again, I wasn't there, so I'll let you be the judge of that. When my professor was in high school, he worked summers as a lifeguard to earn some extra cash. He's got many interesting stories from his time as a lifeguard because many interesting people apparently attend public pools. The pool was divided in half by a lap lane. On the top half of the pool was the shallows with a set of stairs for the kiddies. On the bottom half was a small slide that emptied out into the deep end. In hindsight, this was probably a bad design because it meant the kids would constantly swim through the lap lane to get to the slide and back again. Now, there was one lady who would always frequent the pool. She would always bring a snorkel and flippers, and she would swim the lap lane, as any sane person would do. So the day this happened, it's the peak of summer, and the pool's full of kids and their families doing as kids do, racing each other across the pool, seeing who can hold their breath the longest, flinging water at each other, when along came Karen. The woman waddles over in her flippers, snorkel piece dangling out of her mouth, and she jumps into the pool and she begins to swim laps with her flippers, as every normal person does. Everything's fine for half an hour until Professor spots Karen rising menacingly from the water like the Loch Ness Monster. Karen stood by the edge of the pool and she screams, "Get these damn kids out of my damn lap lane." Professor, being in high school, was taken aback by this. He approaches her and says, "Whoa, this is a family pool, you can't say those things." Karen just glares at him and says, "Mother effer, you have one effing job. Keep these effing kids out of my lap lane." She then jumps back in the pool and she swims halfway down before being intercepted by some more kids. She then whirls back around and she screams, "This is the one place I can go to get away from my effing kids. I don't need to see effing kids here. I deserve this. Get these effing kids out." At this point, Professor asked her to leave the pool due to language. She then begins to slowly get out of the pool, looking exasperated. And do you guys know the look people get when they're thinking really hard about something? That was the expression Karen was making as she planned her next move. Karen then turns away from the pool, shoves her snorkel back in her mouth, and she fell backwards into the pool, all the while flipping Professor the double bird. Karen began to angrily swim towards the other end of the pool. Professor could tell how pissed she was by the heavy puffing coming from the snorkel. Puff, puff, puff. Now, there was a group of 6th grade girls by the lap lane. They were supposed to be watching their toddler brother who was paddling around with green floaties. But these girls are 12-ish-year-old girls. They're obviously not watching him. They're chatting, playing games as people should be in public pools. So naturally, the boy scrambles over the lane divides and he throws himself into the lap lane. Meanwhile, puff, puff, puff. Karen came huffing down the lane, getting closer and closer to the boy. And personally, I like to imagine this with the Jaws music playing in the background. Professor knew instantly that this wouldn't be good, but he was on the opposite side of the pool, and he watched in horror as Karen grabs the boy. The boy is so small that her hands fit around his waist, her fingertips nearly touching along his back. Karen then rips the green floaties from the kid's arms, and she shoves him underwater, holding him there. Now, have you ever seen a person drowning? Their eyes snap wide, their pupils dilate, as they lose control over their actions, causing them to flail wildly, even if they know how to swim. As soon as the kid began to spasm and twist, adrenaline takes over. Professors made saves before, but none like this. With all the lifeguard training forgotten, he leaps into the pool, shoves Karen away and screams, "Get off him!" Professor grabbed a hold of this kid and swam with him to the edge, and then hefted him onto the poolside. He then calls out to his friend and coworker, "Hey lifeguard, get the water out!" because he couldn't for the life of him remember how to administer chest compressions. The rage within Karen subsided, and the heavy feeling of wrongdoing set in. She grew eerily quiet when she realized what she's done. Professor screams for her to get out of the pool, and the police were called and Karen was arrested. I don't know what happened after that. Professor never said anything, but the boy did turn out fine. Oh my goodness, guys. Firstly, I'm glad to know that the boy was okay after that. And secondly, that psycho Karen deserves to get locked up for a really long time, because did she literally just attempt murder that day? All over what? All because she was getting fed up over people being in her lap lane? Oh, you don't own the pool, Karen. You don't own the pool. With that said, I believe she's lucky cops got to her before the toddler's parents did, because oh boy, guys, I've read enough stories and read enough comments to know that some mama bears out there would have been like, "No, don't call the cops. I got this," and then destroyed that woman. This happened when I was 14. Back then, I would go to a fun session at the local pool very often. It's basically a public swim with this inflatable thing at the back of the deep end for people to play on. The changing rooms are two separate rooms, one for men and women. There is a small section for showers, and the rest are cubicles with curtains instead of doors for changing in. If you've been to a public swimming pool change room, you may know that often there's young boys in the women's change rooms because moms can't go into the men's with their sons, but under 13s can't go alone. One particularly busy day, my mom and I were changing on completely different sides of the room, and I was about to take off my shirt when a hand grabs my curtain and attempts to pull it open. I yelped slightly, and then grabbed the curtain, pulling it back to see who was doing this. It was a kid who looked like he was old enough to be alone in the men's. I frown as I worry about being watched while getting changed a little bit too much, and then say in a fairly loud and stern voice, "If the curtain's closed, it's being used. I'm changing, don't try to come in," before violently closing the curtain. I was in my bra and leggings when I noticed a hand closer to the bottom of the curtain. In hindsight, he was probably doing this to seem less noticeable. That's when I reached down and grabbed the boy's hand, pushing him away, while trying to hide the fact that I was in my bra by using my other hand to hold the curtain. I'm now extremely frustrated. I yell, "Go away, I'm in here." After a second or two, I grab my towel and cover up, waiting for the kid to try again. After a couple of minutes, I decide it's stupid to waste my time and continue to change, surprisingly enough, uninterrupted by the boy. I then walk out in my swimsuit and sat on a small waiting bench near the door to the pool, as this particular place waited until most people had finished changing to let us in. After a while, the boy and his mom come over in swimsuits, sitting down next to me. I did feel uncomfortable, sure, but the mom was between him and I, so not much could happen, right? Well, no. Because while I was watching the curtain of my mom's cubicle for her to come out, I feel a hand on my chest. I slap it away, and this is what follows. I say to him, "What the hell do you think you're doing, you creep?" To which the kid's mom says, "Excuse me, what did you just call my son?" That's when I explain to her and say, "Well, he was trying to open my curtain when I was changing earlier, and you can't tell me you didn't see him lean across you right now to grab my chest." The least he deserves is to be called a damn creep. Karen then says, "Relax, he was playing around, he's a kid. How dare you try to discipline him?" That's when I say to her, "A little kid? He's got a mustache, and he looks like he could be using the men's room. How old is he?" Karen then says, "He's 13, not like I need to explain that to you, or do I, considering how stupid and dramatic you're acting." I say to her, if he's 13, he should be in the men's, not in the women's change room trying to peek at others while they're changing. The woman then says to me, "I'm his mom, I know way better than you, that he can't be alone in the men's change rooms." She then turns to her son and says, "Did you try to open her curtain or touch her in any way?" The kid says no. The woman looks back at me and says, "See, there you go. Mind your own damn business." Hearing her say that, I lose it. I'm yelling now saying, "You've got to be kidding me. You just sat there while he leaned over you to touch my chest." At this point, my mom was walking over, confused, and she hears Karen screaming at me. Karen was yelling, "Are you yelling at me? Your parents should teach you better. You should watch your mouth when talking to adults." I just tell her, "Well, maybe you should tell him not to try to grab my chest, and I wouldn't be so mad." My mom hears this, and she asks Karen, "Is this true?" Karen says, "Oh, you're her mother." Well, teach her some manners. She's accusing my son of doing something he would never dare do. She was pretending that he was touching her. That's when my mom tells Karen, "I know my daughter's not a liar, and she would never accuse someone of something they didn't do." I wasn't there to witness any of this, but I believe my daughter. And I hate to break it to you, but your son might not be the perfect little boy you think he is. Karen then goes into a tangent about parenting and her perfect son. My mom just motions for me to follow her, and we left the changing rooms to go to the receptionist for some help. They both got kicked out, and they got some kind of ban applied to both of them. I'm not sure if it was permanent or not, but nothing special happened apart from that. I wish I called the police about it or something, but then again, he was only 13 years old, so I don't know if anything could have been done about it. Yeah, at 13 years old, the boy should have known better than to grab strangers inappropriately. And he should have known better than to pull people's curtains open while they're changing. The kid totally knew what he was doing, and shame on the mom for defending her son. Okay, so this story took place back when I was in Florida in the early 90s. It does involve an act of vandalism that's connected to revenge against this entitled Karen. Anyways, South Florida was devastated by Hurricane Andrew. My dad, as part of a local charity, was set up day after day at a local market, seeking donations from shoppers to give to food banks. You have to understand that this storm left many people homeless and without power, in some cases for 6+ months in Florida heat and humidity. My father was legally disabled from a serious car accident in the early 80s, and he suffered from relentless hip and back problems. It never killed his heart or kindness to others, hence the charity work. One day, he was about to pull into the disabled space at the local market to go buy a few items to donate to the hurricane charity. Right before he's about to pull in, this lady pulls into the space in this shiny red Porsche. My dad parks behind her and says, "Excuse me, ma'am, I was about to pull in there." And he points to his disabled placard in the window. The woman then says to him, "Ugh, you don't look disabled," and proceeded to walk into the store. Now, for anyone who has a relative who uses a disabled space, you know the frustration of this situation and the anger one feels. My dad, seemingly unfazed, waits until she goes inside the store, and he gets out and he snips the valve stems on all 4 tires, flattening but not destroying all of them. He then pulls into another space not far away, and he waits. About 15 minutes later, the lady comes out and she's shrieking about her car being vandalized. My dad's far enough away so she can't see him, but he can hear everything. Karen then calls the police, which was a big mistake. The woman files a report for vandalism, and the police give her a ticket for being parked in the disabled space with no placard. It was about $250 at the time. The cops then leave, and she calls a tow truck. As the car is being loaded onto the truck, my dad pulls up and says to her, "You don't look disabled, but your car sure is." And then he drives off. My dad could be a nice guy and a pure savage when he needed to be. Yeah, that was a little bit extreme what Opie's dad did. Snipping the valve stems was pretty evil. But hey, sometimes entitled snobs need to really get taught a lesson, and I'm sure the woman never parked in a disabled spot again after that. So I can't believe I'm about to type this, but here we go. I've been dating my girlfriend for 7 months. She's been amazing, and we're super compatible in a lot of ways. She's an outspoken vegan, and she made it clear at the start that it was important to her that any potential had similar cruelty-free values. Me, already being a pescatarian, had little difficulty transitioning to a fully plant-based diet. My girlfriend was proud of me for going cruelty-free, and everything seemed well. We became the vegan couple on college campus. But then there's my cat Mittens. I've had Mittens for 3 years, and I absolutely adore her. She's such a sweet and cuddly cat. However, my girlfriend was always a little apprehensive around her, and she blamed it on not growing up around cats. After a while, she started to get me to hang out at her apartment instead of mine, so Mittens never really came up again in conversation. So fast forward a few months, and my girlfriend and I have spent a lot of time together. and we've started talking about taking the relationship to the next level. We began seriously looking at either buying a new apartment together or having one of us move in with the other. However, after a lot of talking and planning, my girlfriend sits me down and she drops a bombshell on me. She basically gave me an ultimatum. She said that with this next phase of the relationship, she didn't see a future with me unless I was willing to give away my cat. She said she believed that owning a cat is unconscionable for vegans because cats hunt mice and eat meat, and because the very act of owning a pet is a violation of vegan principles. Hearing that, I was stunned. I told her that I was absolutely not willing to give up Mittens, and she had no choice but to eat meat, so I was reducing harm as much as possible by buying good brands of cat food. Plenty of vegans own cats and they think along those same lines. My girlfriend then gets mad that I even put up a fight with her, and she said, "How much flesh does your cat eat? How many animals died to make all that food your cat eats? Would you be okay with that being human flesh?" I then got mad and I told my girlfriend that I would have really appreciated her telling me about her cat opinions before we got serious. But she just went on and on about cats killing animals. I just ended the conversation right there. I was so angry and I left my girlfriend's apartment. I just went home and snuggled with Mittens. Although the mood soured a bit when my girlfriend sends me a link advocating for the extinction of domestic cats. I think this goes without saying that I'm not gonna get rid of my cat. However, it pains me to think that an otherwise wonderful relationship could be ending because of a difference in ideology. I don't even really understand where my girlfriend's coming from because, like I said, a lot of vegans own cats and this came out of nowhere. Now, granted, cat ownership can be a controversial topic in vegan circles, and I probably wouldn't have gotten a cat if I had been vegan at the time. But I have Mittens now and she deserves to eat. I've talked to some of my vegan and vegetarian friends and they all think my girlfriend has lost her mind. Some have suggested that it's not about Mittens and my girlfriend just wants an excuse to end it. Others are saying that she's trying to see how far she can push to control me, and this might have always been the real her. I care about my girlfriend so much, and I'd hate for this bizarre curveball to be the end of a beautiful thing. I want to try to work something out, but where do I even go from here? I will not compromise on Mittens, and I don't think my girlfriend will compromise either, so I'm pretty sure it ends. Well, it sounds to me like OP does have his answer right there. Like, if he's not willing to give up his cat, and she's not willing to settle with a guy that has a cat, as much as it pains me to say this, they gotta go their separate ways. And in my opinion, that was a pretty big ask. And for her to give OP an ultimatum of her or the cat is absolutely ridiculous because to many people, their animals are their family. Like, could you imagine OP giving up his cat and then in like 5 years down the road or something happens and they break up? He'd be down a cat and a girlfriend. Oh, and for all who are wondering, OP does post a lovely picture of Mittens. What a beautiful cat that he should totally keep. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/EntitledPeople. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/malicious compliance episode, where a Karen demands OP obey her orders, and he ends up rich, guys. Go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.